Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Future of Law, which is our fifth event in the Festival of Disruptive Thinking series, which is hosted by the Entrepreneurship Institute. My name is Annabelle, and it's my pleasure to be moderating this event and to welcome you all here today. My colleague Nina is also here, and she'll be posting some additional information in the chat box. For those who aren't familiar with the Entrepreneurship Institute, we support students, staff, and alumni at King's to develop their entrepreneurial mindset. We believe that everyone can be entrepreneurial and that entrepreneurial people can make the world a better place by solving problems and creating a smarter, more equal, and sustainable future. This week's festival showcases disruptive thinking, which is the ability to question and challenge the status quo of established systems to progress new ideas and ways of thinking. We're delighted that Professor Dan Hunter has joined us today to share his experience of being disruptive. Dan is the Executive Dean of the Dixon Poon School of Law at King's. He's an international expert in internet and intellectual property law, AI and law, and legal tech and legal innovation. Today, he'll be talking to us about the current challenges of the legal system and how law can remain significant and relevant in the 21st century. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping points. So this event is being recorded, so please mute your mics and turn your camera off if you prefer. There'll also be time for a Q&A at the end of Dan's presentation, so please do drop any questions into the chat or save them till the end. And that's me done, so whenever you're ready, Dan.
Great, thanks very much, Annabelle, I appreciate it. You can hear me okay? Can you hear the music in the background from the skating rink? That'll just, if this gets too boring, just tune in on that. Okay, so let's get past this first slide because looking at myself is incredibly awkward. Thank you all for joining me today. So this is the Festival of Disruptive Thinking. I'm going to talk about some disruptions in law. I'm going to start off by looking at four kind of large-scale kind of macro changes that are going on in law that sort of affect all of the legal profession and all of legal practice. And then I'm going to look at some specific responses that the legal profession and specifically law firms have kind of made to these challenges, right? So this is both, look at some stuff that's going on both in and outside of the profession, as well as saying, well, how can the profession actually start to respond to these sorts of challenges? So let me talk about these legal disruptions first and these four initial observations. I should say, I gave a version of this talk, at least the first half of this talk at an event for the Professional Legal Institute, Professional Law Institute last week. So if you've seen that, you can sort of skip the first 15 minutes, but the second 15 or 20 is hopefully all brand new to you. So let me start off by talking about these four kind of major disruptions that are happening in the legal profession at the moment. And so what I've done there is I've sort of done a scare rule through, right? So initially I used to do this, the future of the legal profession, and then it was like, actually, no, the future of legal practice. And I've ruled through both of those items because both the legal profession and legal practice are not really the focus here, right? So one of the sort of the signature features of people that seek to disrupt markets and disrupt environments is that they don't focus so much on the incumbents, they actually focus on what are the incumbents doing and what sort of areas are they missing. So in flipping this around and thinking about the legal services market, which is, you know, the market for all of the people that actually need legal services, if you think about that, the legal profession, law firms, legal practice, and law schools are really, really badly placed to actually meet that legal service need. One of the things we hear for years and years and years is this idea of access to justice. We have to improve access to justice. And so there are all sorts of different ideas about doing that, increasing the amount of pro bono work that law firms do, requiring new graduates to sort of spend some time actually servicing this market. But actually what we can find, I think, is that the system is broken, that the profession and practice is broken. It's not meeting the needs of a large range of people. So these changes that I'm going to talk about are some things that are going on that are in some way seeking to meet these legal services needs. In the second part of the talk, I'm going to talk about how the law firms have actually started to address those sorts of ideas. So the four ideas are commodification, virtualization, the death of the law firm, and then AI, because AI is my kind of area of research interest. Okay, so commodification. What's going on with commodification? If you go and look for legal services out there in the community, obviously you can go to law firms, you can go to barristers if you have an advocacy kind of need. But increasingly, you're able to talk to organizations that are providing legal services, but they're not doing so primarily as law firms or as what we used to think of as lawyers, right? I often call this, the profession formerly known as law, or the art is formerly known as the legal profession, because what you've got, and these are just some examples here, are a whole lot of companies which are providing direct to market legal services, but often without the need for, or even the intercession of a lawyer at all. The one that I'm most familiar with is Settle Easy, which is in the top right-hand corner, which is one of my startups, one of my legal tech startups back in Australia. And we are an online legal conveyancer. This idea is not particularly unusual or wild, but for about 20 years, I used to go around saying, why aren't there online conveyancers who parcel up work for conveyancers to sort of do the piecework, pay them accordingly, keep an eye on what's going on, and at the same time deliver the service, which is to say the updates about what's going on with your conveyance, just by phone, by SMS, or by a dashboard. And everyone would kind of go, people don't want that. And it was just like, that seems crazy, because I haven't been into a bank branch for years. And I do all of my banking online. Why wouldn't I want to do the same sort of thing for my legal services online, if I'm buying and selling a house or a flat? And of course, I eventually built it. It took quite a while. But it will be the largest online conveyancer in Australia, in all of the states in Australia, by this time next year, and hopefully we'll exit at that point. So the thing that's interesting about that is that we've got one lawyer on staff. That's it. He oversees governance and signs off on all of the things that are necessary for the compliance component of that business. But for the rest of it, they're either conveyancers who are paralegals, or they're engineers. We've got a whole lot of developers and the like building those sorts of things. And so you see that increasingly, Legal Vision, LegalZoom, Direct Legal. These are examples in various countries of sort of direct to consumer productization or commodification of legal services without going in and getting a custom process, going to a lawyer and saying, I need you to give me advice. It's like, no, actually I just want the end product, right? It's like that old line about the power tool CEO who came in and said to their C-suite, what is it that we're selling? And they said, power drills, or cordless drills or whatever. It's like, no, we're selling the hole. We're selling the solution to the problem that the consumer needs a hole in their wall. We just need to find a way of doing that effectively. And it turns out that our mechanism, the product that we're using to do that is a power drill. So commodification is this idea here of we don't buy off the rack suits. We just buy them, that's sized more or less to our size. They don't fit perfectly, but they're pretty good and they're enough. And as a result of that, they're cheaper. So why is commodification a situation now that's going on? Why is this disrupting the legal profession? And it's already disrupting the legal profession. And the answer is that there's lots of venture capital money, at least there was up until a few months ago. So that's on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, it's a very simple decision tree. And that sort of technology has been around for years. And the law is really, really easy to express in rules. So you have the combination of money and simple rule sets, and you end up with these highly commodified types of products that take away the need for lawyers to do this kind of stuff. When is this happening? The answer is now. It's been happening for a while, and it's only going to become more significant. And so that means in certain areas, in the sort of the high street types of law firms, you're going to see a lot of disruption. There's much less opportunity for them to make their living, because the sorts of things that underwrite high street solicitors' practices of one or two people are divorces, some property transactions, and wills and probate. some small, criminal stuff, maybe that probably won't go away. But if you take away 3 out of the 4 big sellers for high street firms, you don't really have much in the way of a business anymore. You certainly can't sort of operate in the same way you did. So there are some changes all throughout the profession. I won't go through all of it, but I can, because we don't have time, but I can say, pretty seriously, and happy to pick up on any of this with in later parts of the talk, or in the Q&A, how it's going to affect each of the different parts of the profession. The other thing that's going on, another macro change, and it's obvious if you sort of think about global trade, when you think about the fact that I'm delivering this presentation. I happen to be in my office here in Somerset House, but equally I could be across the world in Indonesia delivering it to you. There's no reason that I have to be constrained just by place anymore, but thanks to the internet and all sorts of other aspects of globalization and virtual trade, is we're starting to see the offshoring of a lot of work that typically used to be done locally. And the reason for that, apart from the internet being able to, and cloud computing, meaning that you can sort of set up a bucket, here and access it anywhere in the world. So you can put all of your litigation documents into an elastic cloud virtual database over here, and anyone around the world can get access to it. And a lot of those places will have a very much lower rate of labor cost, right? So you just engage in labor market arbitrage. So the cost of hiring a lawyer here is very high, but the cost of hiring a lawyer in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or South Africa is very much lower, but they're really, really capable, of course, and they're often very, very well trained. So there's this change that's going on for what is typically very high volume, low risk work is being offshored, by which we just mean stuck in a bucket on the cloud, and people can get access to it and process it and then upload it, and then everyone can get access to it where they are. And so this virtualization, what's sometimes called managed legal services or legal operations or legal ops, that's been going on for some time now. And the companies that are doing it have managed to become extremely capable at that particular type of work. It's probably about between 5 and 10% of the legal work, and it's very, very large scale work. So it's the sort of thing that mid-sized firms used to do quite a lot of, or you would get junior lawyers to do it. And so that particular part of the market here has changed, and so that sort of disruption affects the labor market here for various sorts of types of legal graduates, particularly new legal graduates. It means that they won't have those sorts of opportunities, because it will mean that legal grads in India and South Africa will have those opportunities. And it has some implications for firms that typically used to make quite a lot of money from that. They used to make a ton of money, and these days it's much harder because these operations have moved overseas. So it's another sort of large-scale disruption. A third level of disruption, or a third type of disruption, is in the nature of the firm itself. So that the bust there in marble is Adam Smith, who at the early part of the industrialization period, the Industrial Revolution, wrote The Wealth of Nations, and one of the things that he wrote about in that was the creation of the firm. And the firm, or a company, as we often kind of think of it, is set up in order to make more stuff than an individual artisan can make. Because as you have power, as you have the ability to be able to churn out lots and lots of table legs rather than individually shaving them into a leg, because you've now got industrial power, you've got the steam engines, or you've got mills and so forth, then what you have is the need to be able to integrate and organize the production of this, so that someone who's making the table legs is then working with someone who's making the tabletops, who's working with someone who's selling it, who's working with someone who engages in the accounting or the managing or the marketing and so forth, right? And so companies emerged because you no longer had an individual making every single part of the product. You had lots and lots of specialization that had to be managed. And anyone who's sat through interminable management meetings, as I do most of my days, would recognize both the benefits and the downsides of that particular change that's been upon us. So the law firm, if you think about it, is set up exactly in that way, right? There are partners and various other fee earners, as they're called, lower down, and you've got various other specialists. There might be IT specialists. They might be manning the reception desk. They might be doing the accounting. Who knows? But all of those sit inside this thing that looks a little bit like that photograph there, looking out across the Chrysler building. That photograph, by the way, could not have happened because that is not possible to have that particular view, having lived in New York for many years. But in any event, that's the idea. You've got the firm that does this, and law firms, are organized along those lines. Now, Uber comes along and demonstrates that I can get a taxi from here, or I can get a car service from here to the airport without having to have a company that has all of those features inside it. We have the platform, right? And so the consumer just operates directly with the platform, and the platform takes control of that. You've got the individual owners of the cars who are driving. And so I can get from here to the airport without there having to be a taxi company involved. There doesn't have to be a firm in quite the same way. If you think about the way that professional firms, and this is not just true of law, it's true of accountancy, of audit, of a range of other professional service arrangements, including engineering and so forth. All of these areas are subject to this particular type of disruption, the disruption of platform economics. And so we're starting to see that take place in law, where a lot of those services are being outsourced, and the nature of the firm changes. And it's perfectly possible to imagine a future in a very short period, if not already on us, where I would be the person that gets the client, but that I collect a team that's done on a short-term basis based on their ratings. I've got a 5-star rating in a particular area for this thing. I bring them in, I engage them as freelancers using the platform, and then off they go. And that particular sort of model, or bits of that model, already exist out there. And I'll talk a little bit about how law firms are responding to that in a minute. So this idea that the law firm is stable and homogenous is changing as well, right? That sort of disruption brought about by platforms and platform economics is a major disruption. And then the final disruption, in terms of sort of like the large scale kinds of macroeconomic and macro technological changes that are affecting the law, is AI. And one of the interesting things about the revolution that AI has brought is that it actually hasn't touched the law very much, and it may not. So this slide is one of my favorites. It sort of tracks or shows in one simple slide, why we are where we are. And artificial intelligence, for a really, really long period, was sort of not very interesting. I was doing it 30 years ago. I certainly wasn't the first to be doing AI in law. There were lots more examples before that. AI as a sort of an identifiable discipline started in 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth College, and all the way through to about 2009. It was mostly focused on symbolic reasoning. So you would represent rules, or you would represent certain things within a system, and then you would reason from it. And there's still a very strong emphasis upon that in many parts of AI research these days. But then what happened sort of the defining point was a paper in 2009, but it had been happening a little bit before then, was that a few geniuses got together. They created this field that we now call deep learning. And since then, we've been living through this remarkable machine learning, deep learning era, where machines are, as a consequence of huge data sets, amazing processing power, and some really, really fancy maths, have managed to learn without being told exactly what the outcome should be, and they have generated some really amazing intelligent behavior. So what does that mean for law? Well, surprisingly enough, not very much. The thing that I was talking about before about decision trees and rule sets for commodification, that's what's sometimes called GoFi, good old-fashioned AI. And that's happening right now. That's being used quite a lot. But in that area that I sort of told you about, it's really about defining the rules and sort of automating the reasoning process. The big changes for machine learning within law are actually relatively modest at the moment. The only area that you really see it doing anything is in natural language parsing, where you find that there are lots and lots of pre-trained models, lots and lots of systems out there that are being sold to lawyers to help them wade through the really, really large number of documents that they would ordinarily have to read and process. So the two areas where you see that is in electronic discovery and in due diligence in merger and acquisition cases, where you've typically put young lawyers onto the problem to say, go read these documents and tell us if they're relevant or important for us to consider legally. And these days that process is taking place through natural language parsing tools. Whether that extends out more generally into the profession and changes the way in which we do things, I'm a bit of a skeptic. This is my area. I love this. I've been doing it for years and years, but I don't think it's going to change the law and the legal profession nearly as much as the three other things that I talked about around this commodification, virtualization, and the death of the firm. So that's the sort of the large scale kind of, these are the changes that are taking place, some of the observations about how people are actually engaged in this. What I want to do in the second half of this chat, and then turn it over to everyone to tell me that I'm wrong, is to look at how law firms have responded to disruption. Some of these things that we've heard about, they're responding to, but more generally what's happened in law is that law firms and the legal profession generally have been very conservative. It's a very conservative profession. It still is and has been sort of always. And it's been sort of always strange for me. I was sort of like, well, a lot of this stuff is very straightforward technology. Why is it not being adopted? And the answer is, well, just because structurally law firms don't want to or can't adopt it. There are some structural reasons why law firms just tend not to adopt technology. They tend to underinvest in technology because of their business structure, which we can talk about at some point. But all firms over the last 5 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, probably 10 years, have sort of realized that they've got to do something. And lots of lawyers have worried and said, what are these changes? How are we going to address this? What do we do? So various law firms have sought to do this. And what I've got here is I've got a set of slides that I gave in Australia a while ago. Actually, this one says benchmarking law firms. The subsequent ones you'll see benchmarking competitor firms, because I used to consult to law firms about innovation and how they actually worked. So hopefully I'm not giving too much away by the way in which I'm doing this. And these firms here are Australian firms, which is, I was going to do the process for English firms. I will do the process, although there are two English firms, Herbert Smith Freehills and Ashurst mentioned here, and Linklaters is also mentioned. But these are Australian firms, and in a sense, it's better if I don't sort of mention any English firms at the moment because I'm not confident of my data, whereas I am confident about this is the nature of these firms. And the thing that I did was I went and took a look at what are they doing? How can we categorize some of the activity in these large commercial firms, and how are they responding to these disruptive waves that are approaching them? And so what I did, I sort of I categorized them on lots and lots of different metrics. I'll talk about 5 here: innovation cabaret, knowledge engineering, flexible work, new law, and innovation internally. And you'll see that all of them are engaged in all of these. The first one of these is innovation cabaret. I call it that. You could call it innovation theatre. You could call it innovation play acting, however you want. I haven't identified any firms as doing this, at least not in this slide. I took that out. But lots and lots of law firms, like lots and lots of companies, are engaged in innovation by press release, right? So they go, oh, we've just, we are doing AI. And when you dig into the press release, you see that they've actually bought an off-the-shelf package from someone who claims to actually have some AI in it. And they're like, AI is like pixie dust. If you sprinkle it on anything, it makes it magic. And so a lot of firms, none of the ones here, of course, but a lot of firms are engaged in innovation cabaret, not really doing innovation, but saying that they are, and they're saying we can manage just by sort of saying that we're going to do this. All right, so they're benchmarking these other firms on knowledge engineering. So these 4 firms that just happen to be identified there have really, really strong knowledge engineering teams. And what these teams typically do is that they'll take their the precedent documents and they will automate them, for example, or they will seek to do internally what the example that I gave you before about commodification does, which is that you actually try to create rule sets that can actually speed the process so that inside the computer system, there are actually all of the tacit knowledge that otherwise would exist outside of the of the computer system, and that if you rely on the tacit knowledge of a partner, what happens when she retires? If you rely upon the tacit knowledge of one of the lawyers, what happens when he goes and works for another competitor? So what they're often trying to do is systematize that knowledge and stick it inside either some kind of database or some kind of automated reasoning system. So firms are doing that quite a lot, and they've been doing that for quite some time, and each of them are at different stages in that particular journey. Another really interesting innovation that talks to the disruption that I mentioned before around managed services is flexible work. So the way in which law firms used to work was this idea of up or out. So you came in as a junior lawyer, you worked your way up through the process, through up to partnership, and then at a certain point you retired and then died the day after you retired. That was the standard model. What happened was, of course, that those environments are not particularly friendly to people that want to have alternate career paths. They're particularly unfriendly to people that are primary caregivers, right? And so often what would happen is that they would leave. This disproportionately affected women, of course, but also people of color and minorities and so on. And people just decided that they just didn't want to work in that particular way. And so what a lot of these firms, or a number of these firms, decided that they would create essentially a pool of people that decided that they didn't want to work the same kind of crazy hours that got you to partnership, or that they weren't going to make partnership, but they still were really, really good lawyers. And they would be hired out on an hourly basis in a flexible work kind of arrangement. And this solved a whole lot of problems for these firms, which I could go into, but won't bore you with. But what you find is that a number of law firms, and that's true here as well, Pinsent Masons has got a version of this, where they take the lawyers who no longer want to work inside that firm, they want to work more flexibly, and create an alternative legal service provider who is focused upon giving really, really good service with really, really good lawyers, but not where you actually second the lawyers directly in there. So the firms are responding to disruptive changes in that particular way. There are also a small number of firms that are looking outside, where they will buy a tech provider, or they'll buy a consultancy that does IT or some sort of technology, or they'll create or buy a new law, an alternative legal service provider. So Tobin happens to be one. There are some other ones that haven't bought the sort of the new law environment, but in fact what they've done is that they've created their own captive alternative legal service provider inside the firm. It's typically a separate company or a separate part of the firm, has different reporting lines, but it's doing the same thing. So we're seeing this sort of innovation that's actually happening within the firms as a response to external ALSPs, which I'll talk about in a bit. ALSPs are alternative legal service providers. And then there are a whole lot of firms that seek to find ways of ensuring that either the partnership or the lawyers who are working inside the firms are able to respond to innovative challenges, or the challenge of innovation. What you find with these things, and it's a topic that I'm interested in given the nature of this festival of disruptive thinking, what you find is that innovation inside the firms is typically not disruptive, right? It's sustaining in the typical kind of differential that we have in innovation theory between disruptive and sustaining innovation. And so what they're trying to do is make their processes a little bit better, just a standard business process re-engineering mechanism. They're not seeking to disrupt themselves. You find a very small number of law firms who say, you know what, we have the courage of our convictions, we will disrupt ourselves. That's true, of course, of most businesses. But we've seen many examples. You don't have to be the late lamented Clay Christensen to recognise that the innovation often doesn't happen very well within inside incumbents, unless you're like Lockheed Martin, where you create a separate skunk works. And I've not seen in any of these law firms any kind of idea that they need to create a skunk works that has a separate type of life in order to do innovation. What we will see, and this is my second sort of pass on how do we understand the overall infrastructure of law firms and law firm innovation, what we do see is the emergence of some really interesting types of models for the delivery of legal services that happen inside law firms, which are maybe semi-disruptive. We'll call them disdaining, right? Disruptive, but also sustaining. Okay, so how do we think about law firms? Now, this is literally a set of sketches that I gave when I was making a pitch about something on, as you can see, some graph paper, and I thought, look, it's just a lot easier if I just take the pictures rather than try to draw this in PowerPoint. So my apologies for the slightly less than professional visuals here, but I just wanted, I think I can talk you through these really crappy visuals to sort of show you how do we think about law. So how do legal services get delivered, or how are law firms structured? So I graduated around about 1990, right? Or my first job as a lawyer was in 1990, and it was at a big commercial law firm. And I came in with computer science degree, was really interested in artificial intelligence, and nothing about that work that I'd done previously had any connection to the way that the law firm operated. The way the law firm operated was it had clients who had complex legal problems, and it had smart people who would create these amazing pieces of advice that would get their clients out of trouble, or keep them out of trouble, or fix the trouble when it came along. And that was great. So it was all what these days I would call, and many others would call, complex legal, right? So you have complex legal problems, and they're hard to do, and every single thing was bespoke. Every single thing was custom. You would put a smart lawyer onto that particular problem, and if you didn't have a smart lawyer, you would put me onto it, and I would screw it up. At the same time, you had these three little bubbles that I put down the bottom that I was vaguely aware of, but didn't really exist then, or if they did, they were just sort of nascent. So what were those bubbles? So if you look at legal services in the 2020s, you can see these bubbles have expanded really pretty dramatically. We start off with the complex legal problem, that part of that quadrant in the top left-hand side, and that's the majority of lots and lots of big law firms. But then you've got these three other bubbles which have expanded. So one bubble is staffing, which I've already talked about, right? Some law firms have seen staffing as a way of making money and a way of solving problems. On the making money idea, so I had one of my best friends in law was the managing partner of a big commercial law firm in Australia, and I said, Phil, you should do some of these other bubbles that I'm going to talk about in a second. You should do managed legal services, and you should do innovation. And he said, yeah, but we've got this staffing business where we are seconding, our ex-employees or some of our staff off to our ex-clients or to other clients. We're doing low cost work via this particular mechanism as well, through an entity called Orbit, and we don't have time to do these other ones. I said, of course you can do time. There's money on the table. He said, we are making so much money from the staffing business that you cannot convince me that anything else we do will make us more money, right? The application of resources to this problem has made us so much money that in fact it's rivaling the amount of money that they were making in their complex legal area. And to scale up any of these other bubbles was a major issue for him. He just said, it's not worth it, right? I'm not going to put millions of dollars into that particular problem. We're going to put more and more money into the staffing issue. And you saw that with lots of other companies as well, like lots of other law firms as well. One of the interesting things about staffing, this is for any of the lawyers in the room, the reason that this particular idea came about was, if any of you are as old as me, and I hope that none of you are because it's awful being old, but when I started as a lawyer, one of the things that the partners would often say is, oh, you're junior associate, we will send you off overseas, either to one of our partner in one of our other offices, or our partner law firms in London or New York or wherever, or we might second you into one of our clients where you get to work for the big company. Won't that be a great experience? The reason that they were doing that was because their clients would strong arm them, not so much on the partner law firms going off internationally, but the clients would strong arm them saying, hey, you've got this really, really good lawyer. It's not Dan, but imagine it's Dan, because I was a terrible lawyer, right? But imagine it's Dan. We would like him to come and work for us, and would like you to pay for him, to continue to pay for him, and it will be at a much lower rate. You're not going to charge us the hourly rates for him, and he can learn our business, and that'll be good for him. It'll be good for you, keeps us as a client, but you're going to have to pay for this. And they hated that, right? Because they were losing potentially a really good lawyer. As I said, not me, but at the same time, they weren't making any money, but they had to do it because their clients would strong arm them. So what this external staffing business actually generates is money, and solves that problem for the law firm. So it's not surprising that this actually looks like it's a disruptive innovation, but actually it's just a sustaining innovation. It maintains the integrity of the law firm, it maintains the relationship with the client, and it also solves the problem that good lawyers otherwise go off and do other things, and we can keep them. So that's the staffing business that's emerged. So the managed legal business is the one that I talked about before, the virtualization and the legal ops thing, where you've got large volume, low risk work, electronic discovery, leasehold, contracts, lots and lots of contract management, that sort of stuff is managed. So that particular type of business is what I think of when I talk about alternative legal service providers, but there are lots of actually different models for legal service provision. But managed legal services is one of those things where you pay people who are legal analysts but not paid as lawyers to do that sort of processing. But it's low risk, it's high volume, it's often very technologically mediated. And those businesses either exist as separate businesses, right? So an entirely independent alternative legal service provider like Axiom, which does staffing, or Factor, which does this kind of work. You've got Pangea 3, you've got these ones, and these are merged to sort of handle these large scale things that meant that the corporate legal departments of FTSE 100 companies and others would just send their work directly there rather than sending it out to the law firms. But what's actually happened is that the law firms have realized that they want to keep that business. And so they've often created their own captive ALSP inside the business. And so examples of this are Ashurst Advance, DWF, PwC now have this, the big four have got into this particular market, EY have got this. And so what they do is they keep this particular work inside the business. They don't send it off to an external ALSP. And so those have emerged as now dealing with that new legal service need, right, of relatively low cost per transaction, but really, really high volume. And so what you otherwise don't make on the transaction, you make on the volume of this. So managed legal has now become part of legal services. And then innovation businesses, innovation or innovative services, internal disruption. You see that I've drawn it as the same scale as everything else, but it typically is much, much smaller than other parts of the business within a law firm. So good examples of that sort of innovation exist in places here like Allen & Overy and Mishcon de Reya, where they've got their own legal tech accelerators, where they sort of involve the law firm with the people that would otherwise be providing their technology at a distance. They're actually now providing it by way of a commercial relationship where they're helping build it to go through. Okay, so complex legal, just to revise what's going on here, right? That's what everyone is doing. Okay, so it's exactly the same. These are my terrible diagrams of the different quadrants, right? Well, the staffing, we've talked about this, right? So secondments and paralegals and all those sorts of ones. Some law firms are doing this with their separate business, but lots and lots of external providers will do this. Axiom is probably the biggest player in the market internationally. Managed legal, we've talked about, so PwC, EY, DWF, which is a law firm here, and a whole lot of companies in outside of law firms will do it. And in innovation, the sort of things that we're talking about, some kind of legal ops, RPA and automation generally, but you sort of see this as actually a much smaller area, right? This is not the one that you kind of do. The interesting thing, and this is my final slide before I get to the conclusions and give everyone an opportunity to ask some questions if they have any, or I'll take a look at the chat, is when I sort of sat down and said, okay, so how do these quadrants kind of line up? Who's doing each of these bubbles? You find that law firms pick and choose, right? So some law firms will decide that everyone wants to do complex legal because that's what law firms do, right? But some will do the complex legal and only staffing. Some will do complex legal and managed services. Some will do complex legal and a little bit of legal innovation. To what extent, differs depending upon whether they're engaged in innovation cabaret or whether they're doing it really seriously. There are very few that do all of it all at once. The only ones that I know of, and people can correct me as in the chat or in your questions, the only ones that I know of that do basically all of it, and I'm not even sure actually they do all of it, is DWF, but I don't think that they've got a staffing division anymore, so they might only do 3 quadrants. But the ones that are actually we're starting to see do all of it are the big 4, right? So the big 4 have all decided that they are back in the law game. They got in and then they got out a few years ago. It didn't work so well for them. They're having a second try at establishing their own law firms inside their businesses. And what they will also do is that they will create a new law environment, which has got managed legal, often got innovation in there as a consultancy for their clients. And they've often got staffing as part of that as well. So one of the more interesting challenges for the big commercial firms these days is how do they respond to the big 4? And of course, the big 4 have got their own challenges, but they are a little bit different. So what can we say around all of this? And have I made it on time? Yes, we've got a few minutes left. So the significant changes are already on us. A lot of these are driven by technology, but it's not only technology. There's things like globalisation and the normal economics of commodity businesses. So that's interesting. The legal techs and the big 4 are doing a lot of interesting innovation. Those groups tend to do disruptive innovation, right? The legal techs have got, and the big 4 have got a really strong motivation to try to disrupt the incumbents who are law firms, right? And this is sort of like the interesting thing for the law firms are looking to disrupt themselves, right? Sometimes it's merely sustaining, but that can be enough, right? Because sustaining innovation where you are, for example, more efficient at the delivery of services means that you can deliver it to more people, or you can deliver it at a better price, or you can keep your margins and make more money. So those sorts of changes we didn't see 10 years ago, but we are seeing now, and it's an interesting reflection for me as the Dean of Law to say, okay, so how does all of this play out for our law school students and for our grads? And that's something which I can talk about in the questions, or you can ping me another time. And that, I think, is the end of my discussion. Happy to hear anything. Have I managed to not share? It's now just me.
Yeah, it's just you now. Thank you
Great.
so much, Dan. That was really interesting. I think especially for someone like me who doesn't practice law and I'm not really involved in the sector, it's really interesting to hear about like all the changes and complexities that are going on within the legal system. So yeah, now we can open up to questions. So you can either pop your question into the chat box or unmute your mic and ask Dan yourself. I can go first because I thought of a question. I think it relates to what you just ended on. Is like, what is the impact that might happen to those who are entering kind of law as graduates? Do you think, for example, that like AI could ever replace manpower, and would that mean it'd be harder for them to get jobs?
So it's normal for a presenter to say, great question, but actually it's a great question, right? And the reason it's a great question for me is this is what started me on this particular journey, as we say in the startup world, right? So I started a law school in Australia a number of years ago, as a few people have heard before, and we were the 8th law school in an already crowded market. Nobody was asking for another law school. Nobody wanted more law grads. Everyone was saying there were too many grads. And so what I had to do is I had to be incredibly paranoid and say, what is the unique selling proposition for my grads, right? What would get you into this brand new Chevrolet? Like, why would anyone purchase this graduate rather than that graduate from a well-established law school that had a well-known brand and lots of alums. We didn't have a brand, we didn't have a reputation, we didn't even have any alumni at that point because we just started the law school. And so I spent a lot of time talking with people around, well, what are the changes? And what does the next group of law students and then eventually grads need in order to be able to work effectively within this area? So you asked the question that was focused on AI, but actually it's just focused much larger on the whole business of law. You know, how do you position yourself inside this in order to be able to meet a market that's changing really, really fast, right? So there are certain things that you can say, right? Don't do X, right? So it's not the case that there will be no lawyers, right? There'll be lots and lots of lawyers. It's just they won't necessarily be doing exactly the same thing. You know, it's not like the advent of computers completely changed or completely got rid of accountants. You know, it's like accountants just do different things. They work with Excel now. They don't work with double entry, books of bankers' books. So what do they need? Well, obviously they need better technical skills, technological skills. They need to understand a little bit about freelancing, I think, because the platform economics will mean that a lot of them will end up in a freelance sort of environment or a semi-freelance environment. We don't do that very well, right? So we need to teach them technology skills. We need to teach them freelancing skills. We also need to teach them how to work out which parts of law are going to be disrupted and don't do that. So I would 100% say, don't be a conveyancer, don't be a property lawyer. Now, here actually I would say it's okay because the property market and the conveyancing process is so screwed up that we're going to need human beings to try to just chug through that thing for. I thought I would bring my conveyancing, my digital conveyancing business over here when I moved, and I looked at this and went, oh god, it's just not worth it. It's just too broken. The English conveyancing system is absolutely nightmarish, and so they'll probably still be. But if you start thinking about these global and technological changes that are going on, you can work out which areas you're going to be fine in. To answer directly the question around AI, AI has already changed areas like document review, which used to be a big thing in litigation. When I became a litigator, the first thing I did as a solicitor was I was put in a room with basically piles and piles and piles of documents, and I had to review them, right? And I would just go through, and I get paid on an hourly basis to do that. It was incredibly boring, but hey, I was getting paid. That sort of thing has gone away, right? So you can identify pretty readily, if you understand these sorts of ideas, where the market's going to increase, where are the opportunities, and as a result, where you should go. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Luke's got his hand up to ask a question if you want to unmute.
And then after that, I'll answer Rabia's question and Mary's in the chat.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for the talk. Can you hear me? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Broader question about AI, not just law, but also justice. Okay, you've heard about what's coming from the EU in terms of AI regulation and risk-based approaches, but also recognizing that we should not use potentially AI in some area. And actually, that's a controversial statement in itself. But actually, potentially, there is a lot of risks here in this context in terms of justice, and even if you had, in law in general. What's your thinking here? Are there regulations? And the risk for everybody is that if AI has got bias or get it wrong, the consequence for the people are potentially really high.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's great. I mean, Luke, and obviously, so Luke is the head of informatics here at King's, and so he and I are working on exactly this kind of problem, and so it's a great sort of easy question, the softball. Thank you, Luke. That you and I are definitely going to graduate the next group of lawyers who understand enough about AI to be able to advise on those risks and to say, from the legal perspective or from the risk and regulation perspective, how we might understand this. But they have to understand the technology enough to be able to say, look, here is where the problem is. And at the same time, over in your school, have a group of computer science and computer engineering grads who actually understand enough about the way that law works to be able to do that translation and to say, actually, it's not just an engineering problem if I'm using a data set that has that's discriminatory, that's drawn from a certain class of people who otherwise might not be representative, and that's going to cause some problems. The classic example, there are hundreds of them now, of course, but the classic example of I think it was the Amazon engineers who built a machine learning tool for HR to try to determine who was going to be who should be interviewed, because they would get hundreds of thousands of applications and they needed to be able to have a fast way of parsing those documents in order to say, yes, we're going to choose Nina and we're going to choose Annabelle, but we're not going to choose Luke to hire. The problem was that the data set that they used was their data set, which was mostly male engineers, which meant that it was learning on a data set that was skewed towards hiring men rather than women. And as a result, not surprisingly, it was a highly discriminatory model. And the engineers didn't recognize this when they were building it, but they should have, right? And so those sorts of questions are really interesting questions around, well, it's clear that ML models machine learning models are going to change the world in lots of different ways, and we need to make sure that we train engineers and we train lawyers in their different disciplines, and that's one of the things that I want to work with Luke on. If I can go back and answer Rabia's question and then Mary's in that order. So Rabia asked essentially the same question that you did, I think, Annabelle, right? Like, how are we preparing the students? So she's saying how, and you were sort of saying, well, how should we? I don't think we are at the moment really preparing our students very well for this new future of work, right? And that's one of the things, which is my personal vision for the time here as Dean of Law, to start bringing these ideas into our curriculum and the way in which we provide opportunities for our students, and so they can see that there are these other things out there. I guarantee you, for example, and this is, I want to say this is not blowing my own horn, but it is blowing my own horn. I go and talk to law school deans and I say, tell me a little bit about your understanding of alternative legal service providers or the legal ops managed legal movement. And I would say that 1 out of 100 that I have asked in the last 5 years knows what I'm talking about. They have no idea that these markets and opportunities exist. So law schools are really pretty slow at these sorts of changes. We will be bringing a lot more of this kind of stuff in. So thank you, Rabia. Since you're my director of operations, it's also a very nice question to get. Thank you for the friendly question. Mary, you asked, what are the implications of all these changes for consumers? I would hope, and I would hope two main things when you boil it all down. So for consumers of law, and I'm not talking about large corporates, I'm talking about individuals who are consumers of law. Two things are, I hope, and I think likely to happen. For those who can already afford legal services, they will find that those services will generally drop in price and improve in quality. So the example of conveyancing is a good one, right? If you have better processes that can be done automatically, and you are getting told on your phone rather than having to call up your lawyer, what's going on with the house? Can I move in at the end of the week because we've got movers coming and you haven't called me, and all you get is a voicemail box, then that's not a good service, right? That's terrible, and it's expensive and it's awful. So we will see over time, and we're already seeing that computer mediated and technologically improved processes mean that the price tends to drop and the quality tends to improve, right? One or other of those two factors will happen, or both. The other area, and this is actually in a sense much more important and more interesting, is that it can solve the access to justice problem to some extent. So I have worked with law firms. I've worked with law firms, but I've worked with law courts to actually help them provide for automated systems to help unrepresented litigants handle their court. Because one of the huge problems for these courts is that they get lots and lots of people coming in who have a need, and often it's a really pressing need. It might be, for example, an apprehended violence order against a partner who's threatened them and their children, right? And they have to get out, And in order to do that, in order to get the order, they actually have to go through a legal process, and they don't have the money to do it. It's really urgent. It's the middle of the night. And the courts are really interested in providing automated services to help them navigate that process. So that can actually solve the access to justice problem to some extent. Now, is it going to solve it completely? No, but there are good reasons to think that that's on the cards. And one of the things that I want to do, and I'm not busy just trying to get my life in order here I've been in the job 4 months, I'll be much better soon, is actually have a pro bono clinic where we actually build these systems for courts and for legal justice centers and the like. And I've done that in other countries, right, where we've actually done this. The students are actually building these automated services in order to help people. So it can, I think, in fact, I know because I've done it, solve some of the legal service delivery and access to justice problems. How much more time have we got, Annabelle? Have we got time for one more question?
Yeah, I think just wary of time. If you're happy to pick up any questions via email, that would be quite helpful.
By email. But the answer to Andrew's question about litigation will diminish with AI's ability, send me an email, Andrew, and I'll send you the copy of our latest paper where we predict the outcome of cases using machine learning models, and then we try to get the parties to settle. So it doesn't actually tell the judges not to take the case or how to answer the case, but it actually encourages the parties to actually settle the case before they get to that point. But I'm happy to take any of these questions by email, and then we can find a time to catch up. I will put my email address in the chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dan, and thanks to everyone else for coming along today and for all your questions. If you'd like to hear any more Disruptive ideas, then there's still time to register for our remaining events. We actually have one on the ethics of artificial intelligence, so quite similar to this session today, and another one about robotics in healthcare. So really interesting topics. Nina has shared a link to our website now in the chat box and a link to subscribe to our newsletter, which is the best way to find out about other events and opportunities like this. Hope you all have a lovely afternoon, and thanks again for coming, and for Dan for that really interesting and disruptive session.